Hey, this is Nem, and we're gonna do some Palace of the Dead, and we're gonna talk some shop today. 'Cause it's been a while. I've returned to you from the dark grim future. I have returned with the riders of Rohan to save Helm's Deep or whatever it is I'm doing, and it's been a while. I wanted to make a video without a script this time and just talk. I mean, I really don't normally have a script anyway. You know, we're gonna try to survive this deep dungeon with new black mage in here, so double ley lines, which makes a big difference, by the way. Really cool. And just talk about some of the going-ons in 14, because I think there's a large portion of the player base that only get snippets, little bits and pieces of information presented to them, things going on, and then they logically draw conclusions about that information. But sometimes that leads to like a lot of, oh, I should not tank this. Ugh. A lot of misinformation, or a lot of like something that I spent a lot of time combating in my conversations with people is the idea of having unnecessary fears, having unnecessary panic, and replacing fear and reaction with education and knowledge. Not because I'm like this, oh, you gotta be the smartest to know, because I'm not the smartest person, right, as well. But it's more that like you'll be happier if you're not afraid all the time. And there's a lot of people who live their life completely ruled by fear. And what I've noticed, I might be wrong about this, but what I personally have noticed is as I've gotten a little bit older and I've seen like the new generations come up, you know, they're raised in an era where like the internet is like this always freely accessible thing. And most of them have literally learned how to grow up, especially with COVID, right, on the internet. And now we have an age group that is, I don't know, 20 to 30, I guess, who, depending on the person, views the world in a different way, right? Views the world in a little bit more of a, I don't know, threatening way, I would say, where like online interactions have always kind of been one of those wild cards ever since I was a kid, you know. I mean, in the 90s, even in the late 80s, like any sort of like distant interaction has always been a wild card that you can't control. But how we deal with those things seems to have shifted quite a bit. And what I mean is, back when I was a kid, the focus tended to be grounded in like a fact of your reality at that time. So at that time, you would say like, okay, the internet is the Wild West. You can't really control it. And when you go online, sometimes people would say just crazy bullshit to you all the time, you know? And there wasn't a whole lot you could do about it. So then, because of that reality, we started seeing programs and pushes for things like, hey, don't be a bully online and watch what you say, which obviously wasn't that effective, but trying to spread awareness. That was the strategy, just an awareness tactic. And now we've gotten to the point where everything is so integrated into online that the line delineating reality, your real existence outside of just what happens online, the line seems to have blurred there quite a bit for a lot of people. And this has caused a rift for people where if like your entire existence has been more or less in the scope of your online access and your online social interactions and your online persona, all of that stuff, for a lot of people it can be scary when those things get threatened, or when you have I don't know, like events happen, right? And so what I've noticed personally is just a difference in the way people view online interactions than the way that I view them. And a lot of people that are like, older than 30, from what I've noticed, not everyone, but kind of view them, right? And so because of that, when something happens in the 14 community, and keep in mind the 14 community is a little more sensitive than other MMO communities. That's just the type of, I don't know, in the West, that's the type of culture we fostered in the game. So because of that, when something happens, a lot of social media presence and a lot of players in game, they don't usually end up with all the information before jumping to conclusions and being afraid of what might go wrong for them. And that's not to say that there isn't a reason to be afraid, just that in the mix of legitimate concerns, there's a lot of like untrue things, untrue fears that are, just, it's like a game of telephone. I'm afraid of the sky falling. Well, I'm afraid of the sky falling. Well, now the sky is falling. It's like the sky was never falling. There were clouds. There was going to be rain, and that's a concern. But the sky was never falling. You know what I mean? And a lot of people don't like hearing that, from what I can tell, because when you talk to them like that, they feel like you're dismissing their concerns. And to be fair, you are trying to help them dismiss their own concerns, but not all of them, just the ones that they don't have to worry about. And it's for their own good. You're like, hey, you don't have to worry about this. I don't want you to feel worried about something that's not going to affect you. And that's true outside of more than 14, obviously, right? When it comes to like online information, we've lost the art of verifying things before just running with it. Whenever something sounds dramatic or scary or threatening, or like there's a possibility of negative outcome, we kind of just latch onto that, because human beings, right, we are like drawn to the negative. No one's out here like, oh, but what about all the positive things? You know what I mean? Like, you never hear people drawn to the positive like they are to the negative, which is, why content creators always love the negative and the drama, because it gets the clicks, right? People want to hear that stuff. And so in 14 now, this is a long preamble, but in 14 now we have a situation going on with a player add-on, which is basically a stalking add-on. You could call it that. It's a little dramatic to maybe say that the whole add-on, that's the purpose, but genuinely speaking, yes. Like, it gives you the ability to violate the privacy of a player. And now there's nowhere is it kind of spoken that this privacy is something you're awarded. In a lot of cases, it's not when it comes to MMOs, but it's always been like an unspoken understanding. Like, people aren't going to know certain things about what I'm doing in the MMO. They can't just look that stuff up, right? And now we live in a data-driven age where they can look that stuff up. So what's going on with this plugin, and there's other videos that kind of detail it a little bit as well, is just that there is a third-party plugin that can track your account ID number, which sounds scary, but essentially what happens is the Final Fantasy local client on your machine interacts with the Final Fantasy servers. And a lot of data from those servers and from your client ends up on the lodestone. So Final Fantasy has an API, an application programming interface, which is, I guess a simple way to put it is it's a programmatic way of obtaining information from a list or a database. You could look at it like that, and updating that list, updating that database, right? So that API doesn't contain or hold PII, or personally identifiable information, about you, the player, or your anything. Like, it doesn't track like your computer, it doesn't track like where you live, it doesn't track your login information, it really doesn't track anything. But what it does do is when you log in, your account has an identifier, and the reason for that is because any information specific to your account will be categorized with that account ID. That is how, for example, if you have a character on your account, you can log in with your account to the lodestone, and it knows that character belongs to you. It's by account identifier, right? On its own, the account identifier is not very useful for a whole lot, but if you can get a list of resources for that account identifier, even if you don't have the account name, right? Even if you don't have the name of the account, you don't have the login, because you have that identifier, you can now see things like what retainers belong to this account and what other characters are on this account. And those things have never been specifically listed in any MMO ever as like a thing that you're allowed to have private. But it's been this unspoken understanding for as long as MMOs have existed, because it's never been an issue before. It's never been something that has been violated, I guess, in that way, unbespoke to the player, that people can now know that about me. We've grown comfortable in the feeling that we can separate who we are in the real world from our online persona a little bit. And in that same way that we've done that, we've grown comfortable being able to say, if I have an alt character, it is separate from my main character. I can go and be private and get away from everyone I know, get away from everything. If I want to, I can go dark, right? And no one will know it's me. I can just do my own thing. That has been like a security of internet anonymity that we've been afforded in the MMO market forever. Like, I mean, forever. Like, from the 90s, it's been that way. And so now we have this plugin in 14 that is able to track those things. And that is a legitimate concern. That is a legitimate concern if you value that privacy. Now, a lot of people are blowing it out of proportion a little bit, saying like, you're going to get stalked and harassed, and that's a terrible experience and stuff like that. And like, stalking and harassing is a real thing. It's a real thing people go through, especially online, for sure. And in 14, luckily, 14 is above and beyond other MMOs in that they've done more for the player base's ability to counter stalking and harassment than any other MMO in history. And this is where like my pre-ramble comes in, is that we kind of shifted how we view these things. So in my generation, my era of online, right, we realized this was a problem with stalking and harassing, and we had to take whatever avenues were available to us and create new avenues for dealing with it. And we did that, right? So for example, in context of a game, right, if you feel stalked or harassed, someone's following you around a game, they're sending you weird messages, blah, 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 you block them, right? That historically, that's what we had for an option. You block them, and then they would create another character, let's say, and they would be like, oh, I can still message you and send you hate mail and stuff on this new character because you didn't block my new character, right? And so then what you would have to do is contact a game master and say, hey, listen, I'm being harassed. They're making tons of characters, and then that player would get banned from the game. And if they did it again, they would end up getting permanently banned. That's historically how these things have worked out. And that has not never, but that has mostly been like a harmless interaction. Like, yes, it's lame that they're, bothering you like that and saying nasty stuff to you, but it's got a solution. You can get it resolved. But then it comes into the landscape has become a little bit more complex in that it's not just about Final Fantasy anymore. Now we have Discord involved, and what do you do when you're being harassed on Discord? And you contact Discord instead of Square Enix in that case, right? But then it becomes like this, all right, well, I don't want to see this person ever again, and oh God. And I don't want to be harassed and all that stuff. What do I do? And the solution is largely the same today, but it just has this added flavor of fear tied to it, of like, what do I do when this is so terrible? And it's, like you feel like I'm so afraid of that outcome, right? Instead of being prepared for it, there's a fear tied to it. And I think that's because people don't, well, I mean, it happens for various reasons, and the use cases are going to change. I don't want to say something that and then like it be taken as that's everyone's situation, because there's some pretty serious ones, right? But generally speaking, when it comes to just online game harassment, your real life is typically not in danger, right? Now, there are cases where your life is in danger or you feel threatened, which is different than harassment. Harassment is one thing, but feeling like threatened, people saying they're going to do certain things to you, find out where you live, that's all a possibility in the real world, right? But it is backed by this, I guess, I don't know, this lack of information, because nowadays we have a lot of problematic people. Like, you look at streamers who get swatted all the time, where like they get doxxed, their address leaks, and then people like call the police on them, and then their real life is actually threatened because of stuff online. That's a very real issue that can happen, for sure. And so when it comes to harassment in an MMO, though, where they have your character and they can tell who your alts are, I want people to know that that is not going to happen to them just based off of that alone, and that this plugin that's going around, right? Like, They're not going to know your IP address, which changes all the time anyways, so your ISP, unless you're paying extra for like a static one, which nobody is. Almost nobody, unless you're like in tech, you know. Nobody's doing that, so they're not going to have your IP. They're not going to know where you live. They're not going to know your geographic location. They're not going to know your computer name, your account name. They're just going to know in-game data tied to your account. And this is still a concern, but it's not life-threatening. It's not going to harm you. It's just really gross, really like unnecessary. It violates your privacy, right? And so it's a concern, but it's not life-threatening. And so what I've seen online is a lot of people unsubbing from 14. I've seen a lot of people saying, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how this works, but I don't want to be stalked. I don't want to make a new Final Fantasy account with a new character and my stalkers to be able to talk to me because of a plugin. And that's not how it works. Thankfully, at least right now, that kind of data is not exposed to anyone, right? That's the encouraging thing. That's what I want to tell people, you know, because I don't want to tell people like, no, it doesn't matter. I don't want them to feel dismissed. I just want them to be educated on how it works so that they don't worry unnecessarily. You know what I mean? Because if you're worrying unnecessarily and being afraid for your life or whatever, or you're afraid like everyone's gonna find you, like that's really stressful and even traumatic, you could say. And it's just a shame that people are going through that right now, because realistically those are not threats. Not to that level, right? But you know, if you try to tell people that like on Twitter or social media or whatever, like they usually are just going to jump to thinking you're dismissing them. Or at the very best case scenario, you know, they typically just don't know whether they can believe you or not, right? So I'm someone who is certified in cyber forensics. I do not have a career in cyber forensics. I've just gone through the training and certification. I've taken an exam to prove that I can do that and passed it. It wasn't the best exam, I would say, but it got the job done. And from my experience with cyber forensics, right, there's a lot that you can do as an expert in forensics, or even as a homebody, to protect yourself from these real threats. Like when someone says they're going to do something to you, they're going to find you, they're going to dox you, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, they're deleting their messages, or making crazy discords that have threats. Like all of that is obtainable fairly easily in cyber forensics. Sometimes you need to like work with a company, like you might need to contact Discord or whatever, but the point stands is that there is a way to handle those situations that protects yourself from those kind of things. And that's an encouraging thought, right? That means the good guys can win when there's bad guys. The good guys can do the thing that saves the day, right? Which is super encouraging. But a lot of people live in fear because they don't really have a lot of experience or knowledge around that. They just kind of have horror stories and like the horrible thought or negative experiences of feeling powerless and not knowing what to do. So right now, with this Player Scope plugin, it is simply a violation of your privacy around what retainers you have, what alts you have, where you've been in the game, stuff like that. It's definitely too much for a plugin, and we've seen it get banned on GitHub, which is fantastic in my opinion. I think that's super cool. You know, GitHub said that it violates. So GitHub is a code repository website for managing like the versions of your code, for continuous update, continuous delivery of your project. And that site, which is like the globally used code repository, there's a couple others like Bitbucket and stuff, but GitHub is the most popular by far, and it banned the plugin. However, the damage has been done. A lot of players that are not in the know are scared right now. They're honestly afraid of what's going on, and I just wish there was some way I could educate them. I give them that like reassurance that like, yes, people might know. And here's the icing on the cake. Realistically, right? You have these potentially some people might get stalked or harassed because of this plugin, right? The icing on the cake is that Final Fantasy XIV is far and above better than any other game in existence. I challenge you to find a game with a better player protection system, especially in one as social as an MMO. Find one that's better than 14's. You can't do it. You cannot do it. The especially with the new changes to the blacklist, like I would tell you that the changes to the blacklist most recently are huge improvements, but it's also unprecedented. You have not seen a player block system so advanced in the gaming industry than in 14. The ability to customize and like a la carte choose to what degree you block someone. Do you just want to mute them? Do you want to hide just that character? All of their characters? Do you never want to see them again? Do you not want them to see you again? That is a powerful tool that we have not had before. And I would argue that it's like, it's a lot. And, you know, back in my day, like we didn't have that afforded to us, you know? And so back in the day, we had to deal with it a different way, which was no less effective. I mean, it had a little bit more to it, and it was more iterative in its steps. You might deal with a problem. That problem person comes back. You got to deal with them again, right? Like we've all been harassed on some level at some point, right? And some people get a lot worse. And the only difference really is your ability to handle the situation for yourself, right? Obviously, some people are more threatening than others, but at the end of the day, you've got to stop it before it gets too awful, right? Before they get like information about you, blah, blah, blah. And now we have this powerful tool. It's amazing, right? The fact that you can just block an entire account is phenomenal. And so you have the ability to protect yourself from in-game harassment better than ever. And that's the icing on the cake, because even if someone can harass you, right, you block their whole account. And if they make more accounts to harass you, you can get them not just IP banned. What's the other one? But you can get them hardware locked out of playing 14 as well. They do have the capability to stop someone from ever playing this game again. It's not perfect, but if you get to a point where the current tools are not serving you, you just need a human interaction to solve it. That's all you need. And of course, you know, there are people who like don't really know the definition of harassment, right? So you get those one-off, like very rare situations where like someone's claiming harassment because someone like told them they stink or some other like mundane thing was said. Obviously, that's not harassment, right? Harassment is like going after you, being relentless, constantly like saying things they know are making you uncomfortable. Right, it has a lot to do with the intent, not just the, oops, I accidentally harassed you. Like, no, that's not quite it. Like, we're all adults here, you know? If someone says something makes you uncomfortable, you know to tell them, hey, I don't like that you said that. Can you not say that to me? And then if they continue, then it's harassment, right? So it's one of those things where this whole scenario is pretty bad, and a lot of people are blaming Square Enix. I don't think it's their fault. Exposing an account ID, as long as it isn't tied to any PII or other sensitive information, which it's not, right? They can't get your billing information. They can't get your name. They can't get anything about you with an account ID. Because of that, Square Enix hasn't done anything like that's a bad practice, but that doesn't mean there's not room for improvement here. And I'm curious to see if they'll make a change or make an announcement talking about it. But I do think it is going to be the straw that broke the camel's back, and that we are going to see something from them, probably something serious about add-ons at some point. That or we'll see nothing. It's going to be one of the two, right? But in any case, people don't need to be as afraid as they are. It's just that your alt privacy is at risk. And obviously, like, there's been some funny memes going around about, like, I was just ERPing with this cat girl and I found it was my best buddy. What do I do? You know? I think that's so funny. But that's the situation. And so I'm the kind of person that, like, I want to remind people you should never be making actions out of fear, but you should be weighing risks and taking action based on potential outcomes, right? You should be doing your best. You don't have to be perfect. Whenever we make decisions out of fear, right? Not only does the perpetrator kind of win, like they've gained control over you in some way, right? They're influencing your actions. But when we act out of fear rather than like a weighted choice, it's the same as like rushing into danger or rushing out of danger without looking at your surroundings. It's about making like haughty decisions that sometimes work out, for sure. And being afraid is a healthy thing, having like a healthy level of fear. But letting it control you and influence your decisions instead of tackling problems from like a thoughtful stance, that's when you run into problems, you know? And that's something that can be hard to do for a lot of people. Like, genuinely speaking, I've met a lot of people, especially like younger women over my years, you know, like when I was younger, when I used to talk to younger women, you know. I met a lot of them that just felt so powerless and felt like there's nothing they could do. And they felt like very afraid of the unknown. And, you know, that happens for a lot of reasons. And it's understandable. And so sometimes those people need like a support circle that kind of help them navigate those waters, right? Navigate like what steps do I take? What do I do? And in some cases, when you're in like an abusive or controlling relationship, they can really struggle to identify what is true and what is false. Those people are in a real tough cookie of a bind, in my opinion. Which is why you should always have a trusted person, trusted group of people that you can go to when times are tough. When you're like, I might not be seeing clearly and I need help, you know. You need that. Absolutely everybody needs that. So anyways, yeah, that's kind of my take on the add-on. Like, do I feel threatened by it? No. Like, and keep in mind, I have my children. My kids play this game. Their characters on here, and I don't feel threatened at all. They're going to be just fine, right? There's going to be no impact. Oh, you know my kid's character's name? You think that worries me? Oh, you're going to say something inappropriate to my kid, random? You think that worries me? You think I haven't talked to my kids about online use, right? You think I haven't showed them how to use the block list? You don't think I help them and monitor what they're doing, right? I'm not worried at all. And if I'm not worried over my 9-year-old and 5-year-old or 6-year-old, right? If I'm not worried about them, I think you're going to be okay too, you know? Because it's all about understanding and being prepared. No, it's not going to be happy burb. It's not going to be a happy time, you know? Like, dealing with people like that is not fun, right? But the more that you deal with morons and harmful people online, the longer you've been doing this, the easier it gets. And what scared you and made you deathly afraid now, in 5 years, you'll be able to handle like a pro. And in 10 years, you'll be bored by it. It'll be obvious what to do. You'll be like, that's stupid. Go away, right? So that's kind of how it works. And so if you're feeling afraid now, you know, don't despair and don't feel like nobody understands you, and don't feel helpless. Start asking questions. If you feel helpless, start asking questions from people who are not going to just perpetuate your fear. There's a lot of social groups as well that all they do is when you're scared, they reinforce that you should be. And they don't provide solutions. They don't provide you a way out of that fear to make things better. They just want you to know that you're scared and you should be, and you're valid for feeling that way. And how you feel is of course valid, but we can't stop at that level. For sure, you need that support, you need to hear that, you need to know that it's okay to feel how you feel, but you got to keep going after that to what do I do next? How do I stop feeling so awful? How do I stop being afraid? Because no one should stress, I'm a frog. No one should stress that much, you know, over something that like isn't going to impact you very much. You know what I mean? I saw one woman who I followed on social media forever. I don't even remember when, like maybe back in Heavensward or whatever, that she just quit the game. And I was like, man, you let them make you quit the game. They're like, I want to keep playing, but I'm just so scared of being stalked. I'm like, okay, so you're afraid of being stalked. Why? And, you know, she said, well, I'm afraid that they're going to know that when I play on my second account, they know what PlayStation I'm on. And so they'll know it's me. And that's just not a realistic threat with the way that it works. That's not going to happen. If it does happen, it's going to be for some other reason we don't know about that was already an issue. So this new issue is not why. Square Enix is not in control of this new issue either, by the way. And still, things are not that bad. But obviously getting stalked and harassed is a problem that we need to do our best on, right? but at least they don't know where you live. See, back in my day, I'm going to sound like an old man, but back in my day, there weren't a lot of securities in place to protect you as a player, right? And so back when I was playing like the old MMOs, people could grab my IP freely at any time, and they could figure out who my ISP was. They could figure out where I was geographically, and there was literally that was just like an acceptance. You just had to accept that if someone had the know-how, they're gonna do that to you right now, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's not exactly like that anymore. Things have gotten a bit better in that regard, and so that's kind of why I have the perspective that I have. Is like people nowadays have it a lot better than we used to have it, but we still act like we don't because we don't know. You know what I mean? That's why. We still think that we're helpless and defenseless and that the world is a scary place. And with time and with asking questions and doing research, you will train yourself to understand that it's going to be all right. And of course, you always have to handle things properly. Like when it comes to the real serious stuff, not just the stuff we're talking about today, but like the real serious stuff, you have to know when to go to the police. You have to know that the police can actually help you. You have to know what to say, right? And that comes from asking questions before you get to that point. It comes from research. It comes from seeing what's available. And, you know, actually, it's pretty easy to do now because you have things like AI tools that actually tell you the answers. I didn't even think about that till now, but like, you want to talk about understanding cyber forensics and understanding what the police can do in those situations. AI models know the answers to those questions, right? You don't have to wait for someone like me to come around to tell you. It's very, very available to you, that information. We live, again, remember, we live in the age where information is more freely available for you as a learner than it's ever been in the history of the world. And that was true when I was a kid, and it's even more true now. So you can get the job done. You can be you're gonna be all right. You're gonna be all right. You might not feel like you're all right, but just remember that if you persevere, you're gonna be okay. You're not gonna be harassed forever. You're not gonna be like stalked and harassed. You might find one person, and realistically, a lot of stalkers and harassers in 14, a lot of them, right? Not that there's that many to begin with. I mean, there are bad circles. But a lot of them are just really dumb people, man. A lot of them are just bored. They kind of want to see where the interaction will go, I would have to guess. It's probably a minority, I would argue, that would actually escalate it to a threatening level. They are out there, but they'll always be. There will always be those people out there, and that's something that we have to be comfortable with, right? We have to be comfortable with bad people that want to do you harm existing, because that's the reality of living life. But you don't have to live in fear of it all the time. You just have to be prepared, you know? And when you get to that level, life is a lot less stressful and a lot more enjoyable, and you realize you can do whatever you want. The problem is, for a lot of people, life kind of teaches them that no matter how prepared they are, something bad can happen to them, right? And that's true. That's definitely true. However, this is a game. I'm playing a game right now. And so this is a safer environment to, I don't know, learn about that experience. For the most part. I think the biggest danger that comes from online interactions, in my own experience, is doing nothing. When something bad happens, you do nothing. That can quickly lead to actual consequences. So you should not do nothing. Don't freeze and just say, I'm not going to worry about it, I'm going to avoid it. But just take some time to think it out. What would I do in X situation? Right? That's what I teach my kids. And they're pretty young. Say, hey, when this happens, what are you going to do? What's your plan? You know, talk through that with yourself. And so anyways, I predict that Square Enix will take action here, and I think they should, right? I do think they should. That we'll see some kind of change. But anyways, that's a big topic. You know, it is what it is. And the internet's never going to change, you know. It's always going to be this sandbox where any kid can show up and play, but maybe that kid has a gun. You know? Like, that is the reality of the internet. Unfortunately. That's okay. We'll be prepared. What else is going on in Final Fantasy lately? People still upset about Dawn Trail. Still upset about WOOoooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooothat Dawn Trail is like a filler expansion. It's like the ARR of the current questline, where ARR took a long time to set up, but then ended on a high note. I think Dawn Trail's going to probably do something similar, where it's not the greatest story, maybe. It's they kind of overdid it with WOOooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooSee in the entire game, despite only being here for one expansion. So maybe they just overdid it a little bit and people are, I don't know, a little tired. I'm not really sure. Personally, I'm not, neither here nor there about it. But I think it's one of those things, I should look away. I think it's one of those things where I have to believe, though I obviously can't prove it, but I have to believe that what we'll get after this, oh, you have to move in, is going to be better. I have to believe that, like next expansion, I think we're going to get bigger story. I think we're going to get bigger characters. I think our current characters are going to be elevated. I think we're going to get to those Shadowbringer highs again, but I think it's going to be a little while. And I think we're all going to complain a bunch until we get there, realistically. I should use a potion. I don't want to. So that's where I think we're at. Oh, am I slowed? Ooh. So I'm excited for that. Luckily, oh, I gotta move in. Luckily, the battle content has been pretty good in Dawn Trail. The Savage raids are fun, even if the DPS checks aren't that great. The ultimate is fun, and Chaotic is brand new and it's fun. So I think we're doing pretty good on the quality of the content. I think we just need more stuff to do, like Eureka, like Deep Dungeon, and that would give a lot of life. Hopefully a new thing, something new. Well, I guess Chaotic is the new thing, right? Yeah, that's where I'm at. I think that Dawn Trail will go down in history as like a Stormblood level expansion. A lot of people look back on Stormblood and they're like, meh. I think Stormblood is really great. But a lot of people are not terribly thrilled with Stormblood. So I think it will be right around like early ARR, Stormblood type stuff, and that the next one is going to knock it out of the park. Because it does feel like things maybe weren't totally finished or need more time, or I don't really know. But I think Dawn Trail could have been a lot more than what it is, honestly. And that's okay. We're here. We're playing other games too, but we're playing this. And we'll see where it goes. So anyways, that was my hour-long talk, yapping about don't be too afraid, replace your fear with expectation, preparedness, and knowledge, and look to the wisest people you know to help you navigate those situations. Be safe out there. Always be safe. And hopefully Dawn Trail gets a lot better soon. If you're enjoying and love Dawn Trail, fantastic. I'm happy to hear that. I'm enjoying Dawn Trail, fair enough, but I think I would enjoy it a lot more if I had like a Eureka or like a hardcore Eureka type experience. That would be sick, right? That's kind of where my mind's at anyway. But until next time, this is Nem. Thanks for watching. I guess it wasn't quite an hour. It was like 40 minutes. Yeah. All right. I'll see you next time. See ya.